Okay, g'day folks. Welcome back to Kieran's Training. So we're just going to have a quick discussion today. It's more about some of the things that students come up with while we're doing the training. Now, I understand that a lot of people work on certain sites and they're taught certain rules. Okay, but what you've got to realise is if you're working on a major project or a mine site or something along those lines, you do come across a lot of in-house rules. Now, what you've got to remember is those rules don't necessarily convert to outside in the real world. Now, for example, one of the main ones that we always come across is students that believe that they have to put a tagline on every load. Now, it doesn't matter what course I'm doing, whether I'm doing a dogging course, a basic or intermediate rigging, a crane course, doesn't really matter. So these people worked on site, this is what's drilled into them on site, and they start believing out there in the real world this is the way things are. Now, don't get me wrong, taglines are great, you do need them on loads, don't need them on every load though. So if the load's high up in the air and you need to guide it through structure, you need that tagline to control it. Okay, if there's a chance of the load swinging into something or spinning around and hitting the boom, then yes, you're going to need a tagline to control that load. However, not every load runs a risk of hitting something. So if you're in the situation where you're lifting a load just to waist height and you're going to float the load out a little bit or float it in or do a little bit of slewing with it and it stays at waist height, what's the point of putting a tagline on it? Why not just get your hands on that load and control it with your hands? Okay, it's going to be a lot safer, a lot easier to control, and it's pretty hard to try and push a load with a tagline. So just keep in mind that yes, if the load needs control, there's a risk of it hitting something or getting in the way, or you need to guide it, then by all means put the tagline on. But if you're just moving short instances, it's at waist height, or even if it's coming down from a height, okay, once it gets down to a reasonable height, get your hands on it and just guide it down as you're landing the load. Same as when you're lifting the load up. To avoid it swinging out or doing anything silly, all right, have your hands on it as it's coming up. Obviously that's not going to be if it's a 200-ton load, but smaller loads, easy, guide them with your hands. All right, so that leads me into one of the next issues I've been told. So students, once again, they come into class, been working out on a project, and some of these projects are saying, don't put your hands on a load. Honestly, can't think of anything more dangerous. Best way to control that load is with your hands on the load. It makes it a lot easier to control, so you can just maneuver that load where you need to do. Now, I do understand that some of these rules are brought in due to incidents on site. The problem is they're a knee-jerk reaction to an incident. So in my experience, there's two main reasons for an incident, and those two reasons would be either the people have a cowboy attitude, so they're doing things they shouldn't do even though they know that they shouldn't. All right? Those sorts of people you don't want to be working with. So if you come across somebody with a cowboy attitude that's doing the wrong thing and they know it's the wrong thing, I don't want to be working with those sorts of people. All right? So you want to get rid of those people. The other main reason for incidents on site generally comes down to a lack of training. All right. Now, it's very easy, and I see it over all the forums all the time. They're blaming the RTOs and they're blaming this and they're blaming that for the students, or they're having to go to students because their last job was working at McDonald's. Who cares? We all started somewhere. But what you've got to realise is this has got nothing to do with the students. So the students, they come in and they do a dogging course or a basic rigging course, whatever course they're doing. The courses don't run long enough, okay? Now, and there is a lot of information for them to get through. They are not going to retain all that information, and they don't learn everything that they need to know. If they did learn everything they needed to know, the courses would be going a hell of a lot longer and nobody would be able to afford these courses. Okay, so the problem is it's with the system now. I was lucky enough when I went through most of my licenses that we got the hours up on site. Okay, we had to run a logbook. We enrolled in a course. We ran a logbook. We got licenses that way. That's not the way the system works now. So we just have to work with what we've got. I would personally prefer that system, but it's not there and there's nothing to do about it. And the other problem with that issue is to get anyone new into the industry, it's a bit hard for them to get logbook hours if they haven't got a start in the first place. And most places aren't going to give these people a start unless they've already got the licenses. So it's sort of a catch-22. But at the end of the day, what you've got to remember is when they get out to site, even if their last job was at McDonald's, right? They've done the right thing, they've got their license, they want to learn something new, and they don't know everything straight away. None of us did. Just remember, every one of those students, when they get out on site, even though they've only just completed their course, they still know more about dogging or rigging than you did at one point in your life, okay? Because we all started somewhere. Now, because they're not to blame. If they do get out on site and they're not doing something quite right, help them. Get out of the crane, show them a better way of doing things, okay? If you see someone's holding something and they've got their hands under the load, explain to them the reason why you don't put your hands under the load. Explain to them you don't put your hands behind the load, okay? Tell them if they're standing in the line of fire, all right? Remember, they're only new. They've got all this information jammed into them, but they haven't got everything they need to know. And there's always something more to learn. I've been around the industry for well over 20 years, and we can all still learn, okay? Now, what's going to happen if you don't get out and show them? All right, the next lift you do, you might be working blind. Now, if I'm working blind, I like to have a little bit of confidence in the rigger. Okay, so make sure that you do show them what to do. Otherwise, things are only going to get worse. The only way to improve the industry is when these people come out, you spend the time to train them. Don't expect them to know everything coming out of the course. All right, that's just my little 2 cents worth. All right, so hopefully somebody will listen and they'll start helping these new people on site. But also remember, if the only thing you know is what you've learned on your current site, when you do get out there into the real world, there's going to be a different way of doing things as well. Okay, and the best way to learn that is by talking to the other people around you as well. Always talk to people, always listen to people. It's the best way we can all learn.